When we think about social media, we typically think of this: a group of friends and family, colleagues, professional acquaintances, exchanging Facebook posts and tweets, maybe Pinterest pins, SMS messages. But when I think of social media, especially from a professional perspective, I think of this: a social network or influence map. This is actually a map of my LinkedIn connections, and it's created by LinkedIn Labs. Anyone can do this simply by going to inmaps.linkedinlabs.com and giving it permission to search your LinkedIn contacts and generate a contact map. This is a great tool in terms of identifying your influence maps. Let me explain what that means. First of all, if you zero in on this particular map of mine, you'll see that all these little dots and looks like strings of yarn going from dot to dot are actually people within my network. You can see some of these dots are much bigger than others. For instance, Tim Massey, who is Director of Corporate Giving at Activists Incorporated and a former Chief Public Affairs Officer at Marist College. By virtue of Tim's profession and his expertise in social media, he attracts thousands of followers on his various social media platforms. Now, if I wanted to determine who is in Tim's map, all I would need to do is follow some of these threads. You can zero in and identify some of Tim's connections. And because these contacts are in Tim's network, then they also become contacts within my network. So why is this important? Well, let me explain in part by borrowing from the concept of influence maps, which I'm taking from the website hosted here by Mind Tools. And in this web-based article, you'll find this diagram. In the past, we might look at influence in terms of a traditional organizational chart with the chief executive or senior leader, even above him or her, perhaps the board of directors at the very top of the organizational chart. Power and communication flowed down, and the nature of that communication and the communication system within an organization was determined by the senior leaders, those in power. And very important in terms of communication theory, looking at one of the traditions of communication theory, the socio-cultural tradition, we can view communication as the interactions that take place among people within certain groups and cultures, let's say an organization like Marist College, and the ways that this interactive communication among people affect and become affected by our understandings, our means, norms, the roles in organization, rules that organization sets, etc. So according to a socio-cultural view of communication, the traditional power structure was very important in terms of the senior leaders, those most powerful, determining the meanings, norms, roles, and rules that we operated by in a group. However, considering the example I provided of the LinkedIn in-maps, and considering this diagram, a 2013 communication prism diagram by Brian Solis, I think you can begin to see how influence is now shifting from the hands of those in leadership within an organization to the many different contacts and members in social media groups that surround and interact with the group's leaders. So, do you remember that image of the social media friends, family, professional colleagues, acquaintances at the beginning of this video? Now, this crowd of social media users has begun to exert power over the traditional power brokers. Through social media, the behaviors of organizations and their senior leaders have become increasingly transparent, and consumers of news through blogs, Twitter, and other social media outlets have become reporters of news. It's often said today everyone is a journalist. So as you continue your study of social media, I urge you to reconsider your previous notions about social media as a tool for informal socializing and friendships, and consider the power and the influence that social media systems have exerted on our personal and private lives. You'd be well advised to consider your own social networks, for instance your LinkedIn map, and examine how to manage that influence network. For instance, if you have an important message to get out, beginning at the center of your LinkedIn map, how would you connect the dots, sending that message from you to those with the greatest influence and most powerful influence networks?